Well, we certainly seem done with this corner of the world, and it looks like we've got an airship to lead us to the place we're supposed to take the crystal. You already know we have it. Why are you bothering to ask about it, especially since you don't have the hostage to exchange with you? Okay, so we're just going to this tower via cutscene. No more time to prep for, what's waiting for us in the next dungeon after the sheer amount of bullshit we had to go through just to gain this crystal. And apparently, we have to climb our way through hostile territory to give the enemy what they want. Not that the enemy ever gave us the indication that they'd honor their side of the deal, but come on. This has to be the crappiest hostage exchange I have ever seen in fiction. And I've seen and read quite a few bad ones over the years. Of course she's at the top, and we had to start at the bottom despite the fact that we came on an airship. Why do I get the feeling that Kain had a different landing pad just for the sake of not having to climb as many stairs as the heroes will? Are there even stairs in this high-tech looking place anyway? Not that muscle fatigue is something that video game characters generally have to worry about, but still, the random encounter rate is certainly something that can get exhausting in a hurry. Especially since it doesn't feel like there's been all that much time to recover after the horrendous Lootstone caverns from earlier. Excuse me for wishing that the game would take it easy on us for a while after that mess. Not just send us to the next dungeon the instant we touched our airship again with no apparent way out. Ah, well, at least the first ram encounter down here wasn't anything too bad. Though the sheer number of random encounters is probably gonna feel like its own version of hell. These look like flans, not too sure why they're being referred to as Bavarios instead of flans or slimes. I probably mispronounced that. Hold on, let me look up what that word even means. Huh. So it's a kind of Bavarian cream, a kind of French dessert with a custard base. Certainly not the kind of name you would associate with some especially troublesome monsters that aren't quite a solid object. Is that name only ever going to show up in this specific game? Did it appear in the original and I just forgot about it? Not that it really matters what they're called, so long as we know how to take them down. And Tella can certainly take them down in a hurry. Unfortunately, he's the only member of our team who can do so, and we might need his MP for other purposes. And now we have a pair of turtles and a pair of ice lizards. I'm not getting too much of a sense of theming from the enemies we're running into in this place so far. I'm just getting that nagging feeling that I should have bought quite a few more healing items before we left town. A feeling that I've had for quite a good chunk of this game so far, and I don't foresee that issue stopping anytime soon. Son of a bitch! We've got a man down and I'm pretty sure that could have easily been avoided. And while I wouldn't doubt that this dungeon is rougher than most of the ones that came before it, it definitely doesn't look or feel like we're dealing with endgame quality enemies around here. And that is definitely going to be the biggest sign that this story isn't going to end the moment all four elemental crystals come together and we see Golbez. Oh, come on! Cecile only just woke up. At least give him the chance to stretch his arms before you knock him back down. And that makes half of our damn team unconscious at this point. Not promising in the least. This is just the first floor. I've got to get my act together, since there's no way that a place that's described as a tower has only one floor for us to navigate around, especially this far into the game. Good God, that one battle just burned through so much MP from both Tella and Cecile. And while I haven't been relying on MP for causing much damage all that much, I've been leaning onto it way too much for healing. I know I keep saying it, but it's worth repeating that at the very least in the Final Fantasy series, I probably should not want to rely too much on white mages to keep us nice and healed. It just feels like such a notable weakness in my tactics around here, especially since one of my medics is the only source of magical offense I've gotten here. Ugh. It's a damn good thing Tella has Osmos in order to keep his MP up. Otherwise, I would be pretty much screwed before we've made any reasonable progress in this tower. But hey, I appreciate the fact that my biggest issue in this dungeon is my own lack of preparation. That's so much less stressful than a dungeon with a unique gimmick we'll never see again that forces us to not use our best equipment. Definitely gonna need to use Osmos in pretty much every battle, considering the rate we're spending magic points around here. Nice to see we're getting some upgrades while in this tower. That'll help cover up my own lack of diligence before moving on. Should I bother asking why they decided to call this the Tower of Zot? Are they mispronouncing Zod, like the Kryptonian general? Or are they mispronouncing Zit, the thing we might want to pop? Either way, not exactly the kind of name that makes me shiver in fear for the main villain of this game. Though maybe I'm not giving General Zod the respect he deserves, considering he was one of the earliest examples of an evil version of Superman. And those became pretty annoyingly popular in fiction, or at least among fiction writers, if not the actual audience. Anyway, we just literally woke up a hellhound in that box. I was not expecting Golbez to have some random donkey carriers scattered across his base, much less for them to have flamehounds in them. I was also expecting the freshly gained flame mail to make Cecile more resistant to fire, as well as ice, but instead he took the harshest hit from the hot fire attack there than anyone else. And to make the matter worse, the monster that looks very magical in nature has no MP to give us. We just gained a flame sword from that, though, so I suppose that will be good so long as we don't fight any more fire-themed enemies in this place. It could easily turn out to be something especially terrible for us, though. Again, it's not like the enemy in this place is all that themed to anything in particular. We fought against hostiles that are ice, water, and fire-based. We also saw some mechanicals here. Pretty sure that marionettes count as mechanical. Sure, they aren't outright robots, but they aren't living creatures either. So fire is super effective against puppets. Not too surprising, really. Most puppets I know of are made of flammable materials. And now I'm remembering the bit from Mystery Science Theater where Crow T. Robot ended up bursting into flames. I'm pretty sure that puppet was only meant to be smoldering hot after the death ray gag. But some sections of the puppet just absolutely lit up, and the actors just rolled with it in a way that made the gag go from kinda forgettable, really, to downright hilarious as the robot started screaming in absolute horror. Really hard to blame him. I'd be screaming in horror too if my eyes turned into blazing infernos. Doesn't matter if you have nerves to feel it or not. That is disconcerting. Good God, we are just farming mana from this puppeteer pretty damn effectively. The puppets just keep on coming. Just how many puppets can a single puppeteer own? Are we fighting against Jeff Dunham or Jim fucking Henson here? Because that was absurd from just one guy. Yeah, we're definitely gonna be absolutely desperate in terms of magic points around here. We can get away with it to some degree, but dear God, we are just burning through it way too fast. Final Fantasy 1, I generally have a white mage and either 3 physical fighters or 2 physical and a black mage, who's generally pretty knife happy. I'm not the sort of person who uses a lot of magic outside of healing. And my first Final Fantasy when I was growing up was Final Fantasy VII. And you can shift around who has the heal spells if things get desperate in terms of MP. The materia system felt pretty brokenly good, which is part of what made Final Fantasy's VIII baffling magic system feel so annoying to me. But yeah, in this game, we just can't get away with using purely magic to heal us without things being all too rough. The only reason we're doing as well as we are is because Tella knows both black and white mage spells, and the black mage knows how to replenish MP. Someone who knows only healing magic like Cecile and Rosa, well, we already see how Cecile does, since he's down to 1 MP, and the only way to bring that back up is via items. Rosa might last longer due to having more MP at the start and her healing spells recovering more health per charge, but it still probably would not last the entire dungeon. Again, this would probably be a lot more frustrating and annoying if I wasn't using a map I found online to figure out where to go next. The size of the floors combined with the sheer frequency of random encounters would make it all so damn annoying. It would probably take me 2 or 3 times as long to actually get things done. Are you kidding me? Trying to drain a Black Knight of MP ends up removing our own magic points? How the hell were we supposed to know something like that would happen? How many other enemies in this tower are gonna pull that sort of thing just for the sake of screwing with me? One step, and we're dealing with another group that is the exact same as the one we just fought. I suppose I can test if the easy-to-kill ice lizards are better sources of MP than the Black Knights, but it'd be hard to be worse sources, that's for sure. Oh, I very much appreciate that. Definitely very much appreciated. We just have the awkward bit of needing to keep one of them alive long enough for Tella to drain in a fight where Cecile can one-shot them. Tella is an absolute godsend, despite the fact that at this point in the game, he is not supposed to be a crutch character anymore. The fact that he can replenish his MP without having to use items is just so damn useful. Sure, part of me would prefer to have a dedicated white mage like Rosa with us, but frankly, with how underprepared I let myself get in terms of items, essentially infinite healing is nice to have. And funnily enough, the magnetic cave made me far more willing to retreat around here in general, so we've got a decent number of ways to hold off attrition. The only real question is, will we be high enough level to deal with whatever bosses happen to be in this tower? Or is this going to be another case of the random encounters feeling more brutal than the bosses? It's a little hard to tell before we get to those bosses. Joke's on you, our mage is pretty resistant to magic attacks. Funny how that's a bit of a thing in quite a number of Final Fantasy stories, and a lot of other role players, really. Against conventional means of offense, a mage is typically a squishy glass cannon, but if someone tries to do spell work against them, they're pretty tanky in their own right. Or at least that's been my general experience. Definitely a good harvest of magic points in this one, though it certainly would have been awkward if Tellah ended up being knocked unconscious by that. Part of me wants to ask why it took so long for me to get really started appreciating his utility so much. He's had Osmos and some pretty solid spells since we first met him. The only real drawback is that he has little room to grow as we keep advancing through the game. Hell, some of his stats go down the higher level he gets, and after the whole bit from the mountain where he learned so many spells at once, there's not really much else he can do to get better. So we just have to hope that we can get some pretty solid equipment for him. Basically, by this point in the game, he would lag behind other mages in terms of magical power and MP, and lags far behind in terms of health behind absolutely everyone, even outright children. In fact, the biggest reason he feels amazing right now is due to the fact that none of our other mages are in any way available right now. The twins got stoned by plotline-related bullshit. Rydia has been missing in action since the Leviathan attack that, again, was painfully scripted crap to remove party members from our team. And Rosa is kidnapped despite being a fairly solid fighter with her bow, because we needed a reason for the heroes to give the villains the last major item that they want. It is completely understandable that Final Fantasy V decided to have a much smaller playable cast. There are just far too many characters that end up being part of our team in this game, when we have at most 5 slots for the team at a given time. And since this is the game in the series to really do all that much with a named, defined cast, they not only are stumbling due to trying to make the writing more complicated than the early games, they're tripping over themselves every time that members of the team need to be traded out for some reason or another. Part of me is hoping that when we finally get to Rosa, that's the only team change we're going to get for a while after that. The other is just looking at the sheer number of times we've gained and lost party members for bullshit reasons just to get this far in the game, and I have to wonder who is due to leave in a poor attempt to make things more tense around here, and leave a slot for somebody fresh to come in. Seriously, we've had 2 petrifications, 3 false deaths, with one person being bedridden for an indeterminate amount of time and the other still missing, and we're working to rescue someone who was kidnapped, who earlier on was temporarily comatose. According to the internet, there's only 1 party member in this game we haven't met yet, and we've got all 9 characters in this cast. Yang brings the absolute least in terms of characterization and interesting story potential around here, but he's already had a false death once and was brainwashed to just be cured near instantly after it was introduced. Sid feels less expendable since he's an engineer, but it's not like he's done all that much engineering as part of the party. It's just things he's done before he joined us. Really, not much of a difference between how a gremlin looks when confused and when it's being normal. Not that I've bothered to try to take advantage of the enemy when we've managed to confuse them. For the most part, I just mindlessly attack, so in some ways, I'm not all that much better than the AI since I tend to follow the same patterns until prompted to do otherwise for some reason or another. Still, this is the second Final Fantasy I've been Let's Playing, and we've gotten pretty far into it, even if I feel I could have done several things better at several steps of the way. What matters is that you do things well enough to keep making progress, not that you do things absolutely perfectly. Besides, making up for your own mistakes can be a good portion of the fun. I've certainly been paying a lot more attention to random encounters than usual in this clip, that's for sure. Though I definitely wouldn't mind this clip ending sometime soon. At the very least, it's kind of annoying to have to come up with commentary for around half an hour worth of footage. Especially when I have to take the time to speak the lines instead of just uploading the moment I'm done with the script. But then it's not like I can get away with not doing voiced commentary in a game where there is no spoken dialogue at all. I possibly could have beaten that group, but if we're so caught off guard that I'd have to take a turn to shift our hero's formation at the start of a fight, then I feel it'd be more trouble than it's worth. Especially considering the quality of enemies we've been seeing in this place. And while I could take out the Bavros all in one turn, our MP just feels far too valuable for healing. Again with the back attack. I doubt we can absorb much MP from the Frost Beast if we couldn't from the Flame version, and I have the distinct feeling the Centaur would drain our MP the same as the Knight. As a side note, why are we getting a palette swap of an enemy that we only ran into in this same damn dungeon? Well, Cecile is certainly pretty prepared for ice-related attacks and killing ice-related foes around here, but excuse me for saying that things that have flame in the name should be resistant to other fire-based things. Not that the game seems to do anything to show you what your own weaknesses and strengths for certain elements are, at least outside of maybe entering the status screen. And that feels a bit cumbersome to me. Excuse me for feeling we should be able to see that sort of thing in the middle of battle as a reminder to yourself. I'd also like to see some of those elemental resistance stats when buying or equipping an item. Not just read a description and take the description's word for it that it's going to improve something. Should I bother feeling annoyed that Yang was silenced when he doesn't have any spells at all? Ugh. Anyway, that seems to do it for this corner of the tower. Now, if only I knew how far off we are from a save point or the next boss fight, at least in terms of terrain. Seems the sorceress is more concerned with causing status effects than actually doing damage, and for the most part, status effects are not that amazing in the Final Fantasy series in general. I certainly appreciate that she's constantly trying to silence one of the people who can't use spells even if he knew some. The man never gains any points in MP at all. He doesn't have any moves that require that resource, so why bother letting the character gain anything there in the first place? We're still getting a good influx of experience points, despite the sheer number of fights I've been run away from around here. Still, it's hard not to feel like I'm risking things going downright horrific if we get just a little unlucky. I have not been doing anything to give myself a safety net in this game if things go wrong for us. And considering how long a Final Fantasy game can be, that is just asking for some hair-pulling frustration. It's far too late for me to really fix that issue. I've fully recorded the game in the side bit of the PSP version that I'm willing to go through. Still, this is all something to keep in mind for future Let's Plays of Final Fantasy and other Japanese-made role-player games. I can't really say the same for Western-based role-players, for sure, though. I don't know how many of the rules translate between them. Japanese and other Eastern role-players have their mechanics and storytelling at least somewhat based off the early Final Fantasies. And, Final Fantasy itself used Dungeons & Dragons as a bit of a loose foundation for some of the things that they would implement and evolve off of. Whereas things like Dragon Age, Baldur's Gate, Elder Scrolls, and various others are more directly based off Dungeons & Dragons, with a different evolutionary process for that style of role-player games in terms of mechanics and storytelling. There would be enough to feel relatively recognizable. You can go from, say, Wild Arms to something like Divinity Original Sin and still have some expectations and knowledge transfer over, but there'd still be more to throw you off than making the leap from Final Fantasy to, Suikoden or something. Okay, Sage's Surplus doesn't really feel like all that much of an upgrade over the Kempo Gi. But I suppose having more magical defense is good, even if the physical defense is literally exactly the same. And it's not like we care about his attack power. So, poisoning the enemy just makes their sprite look darker, and it's barely noticeable even when you know what to look for. Excuse me for feeling that if someone is affected by a status effect, there should be more obvious signs than that, regardless of if it's an enemy or an ally that's affected. Hell, silence is certainly pretty obvious to figure out with the text box with a bunch of dots coming out of their mouths. When we're blind, we see the sunglasses show up, which... it takes a bit to figure out what that means, but it's at least easy to notice. Not a major thing, but just something that felt easy to talk about at the moment. Probably should have asked this earlier, but do these doors mean small elevators or staircases? It's kind of hard to tell given the environment. Anyway, that should do it for now. Next time, hopefully we rescue Rosa, and hopefully she won't have any trouble for the entire rest of the game. We've already had to help her out twice so far.